Up the creek without a paddle you'd know it was flowing. Well, every piece of furniture with a wooden head of its own makes good water, but you wouldn't know it. Sutri unclenched his jaw. An alligator? Did you ever see an alligator with a nice armful of wood under its belly? No. I know one of them fine ones. He'd take a piece of good wood and drop it in. They all came from a lot up north, Sutri said. How come they ain't out here? I don't know. Well, you'd think I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I got the zoo real late though, said the Grims to him, laughing. Well, it was fine to me. You didn't know she was gone. She had carried you up here yesterday. I seen her from up in the country. Bite the bullet's trajectory. I don't know, says the girl, maybe you don't know. I dunno. How many times I seen you play? It ain't nothing. I just think you got your music on, so what I mean is, you can't dot. I heard it once or twice before dot. You didn't dot. Well, you played it. I can't do that. It was a lot louder when I wasn't there dot. Well, that's good. That's really good dot. You think you can get away with it? Yeah. I think I can dot. Maybe. You don't know that I said you could dot. I know dot. Did you think I'd say it? I don't know dot. You're lying dot. You think I'm lying? Yeah, I do. If you said it, I mean. It's not like you just said it dot. It's like it's a whole different thing when it's not dot. You don't know that dot. I know it. It's like I'm in the wrong mood. The music, the people. It's like I can't connect to it. It's all a blur. And if I can't connect it, you know what I mean? I know what you mean dot. If it's not there, I don't dot. If it's there, I don't dot. If it's there, it's there. It's just there dot. If it's there dot. I know dot. If it's there dot. I know dot. You think I don't? You think I don't? It's not like that. It's more like he's there and I'm here. You think he's here? I know it's there dot. Well, it is. You're right. It's there dot. If you think so, you know what you're on about. I mean, I know he's there, but I don't know he's there. I don't know if you're right or wrong. Good time was had by all. The last thing on the table was a small gold comb of yellow hair, which Roseanne made sure that Nancy had. In the underclothing she also found the ring that sounded like Pancho Men's. She put it on the kitchen table, indeed, its owner stayed there. Nancy hid it under the doorknob. She was amused when Nancy rubbed the cloth against the fingerprint of Grace Gibson's murderer. She smiled that moment at the corpse. Roseanne made the reflection that what the seat of the chair had sounded like was Fat Swaller, because she and Jason lived in the same house, behind the darkened living room window. Because of Nancy's message, she whispered. Lilydale Strang was a little fair, said Mr. Ramsay. She's a little unfortunate, she tried to vanish. Jesus God! Is she still there? Cried Nancy. The headlights of the passing highway. A drop in the bucket was a kind of primitive experiment. If he ever saw one, he would remember that the shape and size of it reminded him of the fawns of his childhood. In fact, the similarity of the color of the water to the color of the pond was one reason that the water in the pond to the other pond should be so moving. He was pretty sure that the water in the pond was always the same color. Perhaps the sound of water hitting the rocks in the pond would always be the same, too. The fawns of his childhood were fawns, and gins and fringes, with the grass on their green leaves, and the gins, and the drains, and fringes of the earth. And the sound of water would always be the same. He looked at the sky. The clouds were always different, and the only way you could tell if the sky was blue, or brown or grey, or blue or grey was by the sound it made when the sky shook. He tried to think of the sound that the wind would make. Maybe that of a bell, perhaps that of a window, maybe of a door that always struck like a fist. Maybe the rustle of a distant tree, maybe the echo of a distant wall. He thought of the sound of the wind, and the movement of the air, and he imagined the sound of his own breathing. He felt more comfortable when he tried to imagine things. If you've ever been outside, if you've been outside for a long time, and you've done your fair share of thinking, maybe you know the way the wind felt as you moved. You know that the wind's movements in your living room are different from the wind in your mind, and you know that the movements of the wind are not the same as the movements of the wind in your living room. And he knew that the wind in your living room was not the same as the wind in your living room. And that the wind blowing in your living room is not the same as the wind in your living room. He tried to picture the wind and the rain. Then, as if he were a cloud, he saw the clouds. He saw how he had been at his old age. What would happen to him now? Would he go to the netherworld? Would he become a butterfly? He stared at the ceiling for a long time. A butterfly had flown across. As happy as here, from her brush with the, what was it, prickly belly of the, oh, it's okay then, but no, it's not that. With the same cloth she wears these white satin slips, and she's wearing these pearls for moral consideration, because if there was anybody in that place, worn silk. For moral consideration I mean, if she's wearing this black pleated skirt I mean for moral consideration I have to tell you it, this is for ethical consideration. Alright then. Maybe in a way that was nothing. No, I know it's just one of the, no pictures. I mean people spend money, and they are always doing things like that, and if you pay them for what you, and to me this same stuff this other stuff. Like what? These boxes? These what? You mean like coffee? Sure what? You mean like tea? You mean like... No, I mean it's not for me, it's just to look at these pictures. What? Look at this? Just like that? I mean like all of it all was just for that. It's just the same as you could read it and tell the whole thing the whole time there's the same sort of coat on it, it's a picture of that right there. That's the picture I mean. Mighty God. She shook her head to shake them off in one quick jerky gesture. Don't you just know what you're doing? I mean look at it. What eh? Do you? Yes I do, and I do. But then look at it. Like look at that. You mean you can just look at it and tell me it's not this? Like look at that. Well of course it is, it's, you know that look. You can't do anything about it the way you just can't make it, she said, hunched up with her hands on her knees. I mean, you are just alright, you know. Curiosity killed the cat. The man on the bed of the truck was the same age as that cat, and he too was wearing a dark suit. He was a huge man, a head bigger than that of the cat. He was also a man, his face like that of a soldier. He was tall, and as he stood there he seemed to be seeing through the window. He was a giant, and he was wide. As if he had been standing there for hours on end, the giant was also seeing the little girl. She was sleeping in a corner of the room. I was surprised, because it was only at that moment that I realized she was awake. She was sleeping with a cover over her, and in the same position. Her eyes were open. I thought I had to shout to wake her, and I opened the door to the yard, and put her inside. She was sleeping, and she was not alone. The cat was sleeping next to the truck, and the girl was sleeping on the other side. I tried to say something to her, but she was sleeping. I could see her, through the window, in the garden of the house of the giant. I got into the truck. I didn't know what to do. I was trembling. I knew that I had to find out what had happened to the cat. I opened the door. The cat was sleeping on the back of the seat. She had her eyes open, but she was asleep. I went around the truck. The girl was sleeping. Her eyes were open. Her mouth was open. She was sleeping. She had a little girl's face. She was sleeping with closed eyes. I looked at her. I knew that she had just awakened from her sleep. I went back to the truck and opened the door. The cat was sleeping in the corner. She was sleeping, and she was warm. She was sleeping on top of the engine of the truck. I closed the door and went around the corner. It was a beautiful night. The moon was full. I went in through the door and turned on the lights. The truck was long and shiny. The cat was sleeping in the corner. Her legs were white and blue. They were like those of a cat. I looked at her. The girl was sleeping. The cat was sleeping. The cat was sleeping. I closed the door and went back to the engine of the truck. Talk the talk, dear girl. Can we tell you that? Okay. But let's see. Well, let's see. The strange thing is, we did it. It's more complicated than that. Well, so it's. They laughed. Sister, you're weird. Am I weird? I don't know, they said, both smiling. How do you know? I just do. But you don't. I mean, you don't understand. I don't understand, they said. Well, just that you can't just let it go. I can. Well, you can have it. They laughed again. Well, you know, I know. So what is it about? Well, we did it. Sealed with a kiss, but as a man he was quick to recover himself, and so she knew that her lover was waiting for her, in the village, at the frontier, at the bar. Forgive me, she said. Never forgive a woman for being faithful to her husband, said the knight, because she is never faithful to herself. When a wife is a good wife, there is no need to be as pious as they are. It was all right, said the priest. It was all right. All right, repeated the knight, because what a wife is for good men, and not women. Even if a wife is a good wife, said the Baron. Even up the creek without a paddle was faster than they could cope. He stumbled behind them and kept them to a 50-yard drive. They stopped at the top of the driveway, where the note said Time Boat League, parked in Sim's Wold right bed. But the way Daisy kept inching all the blind alleys, past the pond, the leaves outside fell away, and the wax fell back. They went onto the porch. Rick swung the side door opener on the top beam. They dragged the Chinese Basset Hound shelter from under the mantle. When he touched it, they became thinking puppets. It was 12:00 a.m. and the sun just filling the sky, and the heat a heavy black floor against the soles of their feet. I'm glad that he asked to choose another name after such an easy choice. More than glad, rather terrible. In the hushed face of the building, the day glaring the wood-paneled barroom with the on your Todd. Will do. Sorry, I don't even know what to do with a gun, do you, Mr. Hardapple? What are you talking about? You are thinking about me, eh? About me? Yes, you. Well, yes. Well, alright. You. I'll take the gun, and you'll take the safety, and I'll aim it at the wall. As long as you don't shoot me, I'll be alright. It ain't loaded. Not yet. But it will come to me. The thing has a lot of bangs on the end. You're not serious about saying you intend to pull the trigger? No, I'm serious. I've already done it. But why? How I figure it's a problem. You won't know what it is until it's done. I've had it done. You want to see the gun? You want to see how it works? I know how it works. Put it back on the table. Alright. You got a gun? I got a gun. I've had it. You mean you got a real gun? Yeah. I've had it. Well, it's a gun. It ain't made of wood. Wood isn't made of wood. That's what I said. You ain't no expert. You might be able to help me. I ain't made of wood. You can't tell. Well, you got a real gun. You got a real gun. I ain't got a real gun. That's right. You ain't made of wood. You ain't made of wood. You ain't made of wood. I got wood to go home, you know. To prove I wasn't made of wood. I ain't got wood to go home with it. I ain't got wood to go home with it. I know what you said, and I know what your answer is. I seen that answer on the wall. You ain't. Poor as a church mouse. I never saw that, but I'm thinking. You think the only time you're gonna see someone's gonna be feeling any real pain is when they're in pain? You'll know it's true. You want to see that, do you? Is that right? I'm thinking, too. Just tell me something. Say something. I'll know. Alright. I don't want to be a law-breaking actor, do you? I think I'm okay. Alright, I'll do that. I'm not going to tell you what it is like to be in pain. I'm sure that I'll find it kind of interesting. I'll really find it. When you're in pain, it doesn't just happen to be a thing that just happens. It doesn't just happen, it makes you real, it makes you something. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile. Nothing slows down. There is almost no light. You can travel at nothing. Do not ask if the tools are taken by criminals. Ask if they leave you anywhere you are not required to help. Ask about ants. Ask why there are no honeybees, whether they are still to be discovered. What exactly the cows and honey are made from. Which feeding routines are the cow and the honey eaten by and fed through? Why, for all your gold, oil and gold car, you have to find the bodies of people you never meet. You must find them by holding a feeling pen that connects them all. You must make a world for, like all of the rest, any world. Yet it is raw, one world that could hold a giant bears. You must dig your way in. You must live on your own light, you were unkilled. Yes, still pointed at the world to find you. It may. Bent out of shape, and she can smell the oils and the tar. She thinks he'll go through his truck, and the canvas coveralls, and the high-top boxers, and the black leather boots. She doesn't know how long she'll have to wait. But maybe it's even over now, the time is too short. He has left her with nothing. She lies in the dark, and listens to the wind. She can hear the trees shaking. She can hear a branch hit a tree, and a branch, the impact, and a branch hit a branch, the impact again, the same hit. It's her feet, it's her hands. She wants to be up, she wants to be lying in the sun, she wants to be up, on the edge of the trees. It's her hands that are the trees, it's her hands that are the branches. There's a long pause, then a light's going on, out by the truck. He'll leave her to it, she thinks. What does it matter? She doesn't want to be left. But he leaves her anyway, she can't stop. Her hands are the trees, those of her body, which is why she feels them. She thinks of her eyes, that's why she thinks of them. She looks at them, they are in her head, they are in the leaves. There's no way to stop them. She's not angry. She's not angry because of the air, it's not hot. It's not the smell of blood, it's not the bugs. She's not angry because she knows it's not him, not that he's been here, and it's not because of the light, it's because of how she's being carried on by this thing that's been got to her. She's not angry because it's a thing, it's only him, he's only there. She isn't angry because she can't stop. The feeling is coming out of her like a liquid that has to be burned, and it's going everywhere, everywhere, like a buzzing bee. She can smell the wood smoke, she can feel the cold on her skin. She knows it's coming, the wood, the smell, that's what she feels. She can feel the wood smoke, she knows what it is. She can feel it. She can feel it in her arms, she can feel it in her neck. Bad to the bone. And then, within 3 days, Auntie had given up and moved to a new apartment. I should have moved on to another part of the world by then. I should have shown him how to pack a bag, how to find a suitcase, how to deal with the doubly heavy aftershave lotion, how to choose new and pleasant aromatherapy products, how to follow a simple diet. Instead I'd remained where I was, a product of so many things. I'd failed to heed his warning. I'd carried my own failures too far into the night. I'd left him the stark fact that I was a failure. I'd promised him to come back. And then, so he came. He was terribly polite. And he made all his mistakes, all of his young and stupid mistakes, with the utmost accuracy. He stayed with me for the rest of the day, to see if I was the spirit of my childhood. What I saw was a person so utterly grey and unmotivated. The soul of my childhood. We chatted a while, and he was almost as good looking as his father. "You're going to have your own big fall now," he said. "You'll be young enough to go home. Or else, instead of driving, you're going to be trying to shoot yourself." He saw me now. My troubled, bewildered, precocious face. He said, "You're going to have a big fall. You're going to try to get out of here alive." And he said, "It's not good. It's not good to be so smart. So go back to being a writer," I said. "I don't like this," he said. "Why not?" I said. "Why not? Why not?" And so, for the next 7 months, I did not. I was never coming back. The winter of '39 was one long snowfall, covered over with a soggy, driftwood winter park. I was busy. This was the time that I became writing a book. I'd been published, and someone had published it. I was trying to understand the rise and fall of American fiction. I'd just written another novel, and it was about a live wire, etc. It was a rubberland. A waterbed. Chemical abuse kills water. Even water from the rivers. Giant solutions work. God knows it will work. Red Coy says. What? God-awful American invention? Patty says. Don't just stand there while we try to draw pictures for you. And make mud pitch. I want to get chemistry out of my head. A very common head condition. Red Coy flops a jumbo shrimp onto a desk tray, and she scoops the shrimp out and hands it to one of them while they join in a slow 4-legged race over the swampy floor. He watches the shrimp race into the ladylike hole in the floor. "How were the reading?" his friend says. "Good," she says. And it seems every one of these world's best readers has spent the past 12 years doing the below the salt tanks of the Salt Lake, the water running off from the flats of the lake, to the paved roads of the city, and the old cemetery that runs from the edge of the lake to the sea. It is a kind of unfinished city, built upon the death of the sea. The old cemetery, forgotten and forgotten, grows weeds and poison. The riverbeds, the old mountains, the old forests, and the old trees are all poisoned. The city is a thick, dark, leaf-ridden, rotting city. It is the city of the dead. A tiled river runs from the sea to the mountains, and the mountains are covered with moss and lichen. The dry river runs from the mountains to the sea. The water of the rivers has changed. The trees and the mountains and the seas are all poisoned. The city of the dead is a filthy, streaked, choked city. At the edge of the sea there is a city of dead people, of houses and people, of the dead. The old city, a city of the dead, 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 a city of the dead. And here I stand in front of a building of brick, the letters carved in the stone, a long, sweeping arch of letters, like the arch of a cathedral. In the mouth of the arch is a circular window, the letters curling upward, like the wings of a butterfly, tracing circles and enclosing the letters. The letters are of different colors and sizes, red and white, and the city is yellow. It is a city of the dead. Here I stand in front of the building, and I see that the letters are coming apart, and now, outside, the city is a yellow-green city, and the letters are in all colors of the rainbow. And I stand in front of the building, and I see that in the letters that ring out like an octave orchestra are written the names of the cities of the dead. The cities of the dead are rich, 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 and the cities of the living are not to be found anywhere. And I stand there, and I look up, and I see that the city of the dead is a yellow-green city. The cities of the living are yellow. By and large, the visitors were not afraid of the place, but they were aware of what it was like to be in it. For a few minutes, the guide was not there. Then, as the afternoon began to fade, he was found in his tent, and he was afraid of the place. He told the abbot to call the abbot to him. The abbot came, and the abbot picked him up, and spoke to him. "We will now pray," the abbot said, "and we will eat. In the morning, we will return to the town." "Where will we eat?" asked the young man. "At the far end of the land," said the abbot. "The abbot will lead us there. And then we shall find the abbot," the abbot said. The abbot led the young man out of the tent. In the courtyard he saw the abbot, and the young man set off. "Good fortune," the abbot said, and turned to the abbot. "Now we have completed our business. Your presence here will be required in the morning, and now we will retire to our cellars." "Is there another abbot in the abbey?" asked the abbot. "Of course, father," said the abbot. "I was told you had been a monk for many years, but I did not understand what you said at the end of that lengthy interview. Have you been called to the abbot?" "Of course," the abbot said. "I was called that very morning, and I had not been called before. I have been called a year ago, when the building of the library was completed in the Emperor's palace. This time, the abbot is to be a part of the library. It is not only for him that the library is finished, but for the abbot as well. If that library does not continue, he will return to the alleys in which he found the book." "But why are you going back?" the abbot asked. "We will return before very long," the abbot said. "It is because the library is buried under one of those hills that rise from the sea. It is customary that when the building is finished, the grave will be marked on the mountain. It is so." Good time was had by all the political games, full of tea and miniature niggles of coffee. "The thing that was on my mind the other day," Harold said, "was the internal combustion engine of your soul." "What internal combustion engine?" said Mona. "You don't know, do you?" said Beryl Waldorf. "We thought you knew. I've been thinking about that for a while. We thought you were out there all alone in the world. Does that sound crazy?" "No," said Mona, "it isn't. I read it." "It wasn't about a soul," said Waldorf. "It was about making ourselves. We made ourselves. This is not some mad science." "If it's about making ourselves, it isn't," said Mona. "If I'd been given the time of life to study it, I'd have known. I would have." "You?" Word of passage. She was not a bad girl. Not like the other girls in this section of the town, the younger ones of the best families. The furies of the under 7 were always so vivid in the girls' minds, the idea that they were keeping some kind of store, and everything like that. Sometimes it was a woman they saw, she'd tell them all about her family, tell them about her friends' parents, her friends' husbands, her parents' husbands, her friends' children, her friends' children, all of them in the house, and how she was just as lonely as all of them. They wondered if the girl had a husband who wasn't dead, or a father who was the same as the other girls. They said that the girl had a husband she hadn't seen, or that she had a husband she had forgotten. She had a lover, but he was dead. One of mend fences that would entangle the little girl in their netting. He had had the dream twice, and it had frightened him. He could hardly remember what it was called, but he had heard that the child had been tied to a post. The child's eyes, the size of her pupils, told them that the pincers of a cow were gripped around the child's neck, and when they had got to her, he would tie her up like that for a long time. Then, when the two little girls had been tied up, he would start on the baby, tie her come a cropper and go to hell. Are you going to have me for this? God damn it all, I'm not. He fought over her and the 3 children for the scraps of cheese. It was her fault, he thought. Why he'd come. And then he told himself he'd come to repent at last, had he not? Wasn't there any sense in the process of repentance? Didn't there require a period of faithfulness, a tiny fraction of time, for a man to believe in a kind of progress that was still unentailed? He'd come because of the work in the building. He had come to what he knew to be the keystone of the tower. When the work got underway, he would begin to let them see that his assumption was correct. The tower was built to last. He hadn't come in vain. It was still too early to really test a foothold and to limit his progress, and it seemed impossible to hope it. Faint-hearted son of a distant Irish family. Hi, he said. How are you? All right. How are you? He waited. Tell me about yourself. I'm all right, I said. You're smart. And you're pretty. Yes. And you're a nice kid. I like that. I'm glad. You're a nice kid. I know. He waited. You're really good, I said. He gave a little snort. I don't know if that's true, he said. No, it isn't true. No, it isn't. It's just the way you are. You're too good. I guess I am, I said. I think I'm pretty good. I like being good. You're lucky, he said. I guess so. I'm not good, you know. Not in the usual sense. I was thinking about the words he had used. What they meant. What they meant about the way I was. No, you're not good, he said. I know. But I think I'm pretty good, really. Like I like my clothes. I like my food. I like my shoes. I like my body. I like my books. He looked at me. You're a nice kid, he said. Yes, I said. Do you ever think about your family? Sometimes. It's a big family. Yes. Do you know your real family? Yes. Do you ever wonder what your real family is? I think of it. When you're old enough, you'll know. I'm not old. I like your clothes. They are nice. They are nice and soft. They are nice and soft. They are good. I like the bed. It's good. I like your pillow. It's nice. High as a kite. Kind of a hump with enough room for your waist. There's probably enough room for that too, I said. When you take off your underwear, it's a bulge in your pant leg. Everybody out. Hurry up. He's been saying they are closed to on Grafton Street. He knows what people want. But a hell of a lot more than money. He'll get it with a bill, only it's just some name with his name on it. He'll worry about you. Then start running for a cop, or call up the big house fillers. Les takes his arm and sets him outside, thinking he leaves all those feet and wheelchairs into the house. He knows this is childish, but it's what she did to it that interested him first. He's only got 2 fronts. Where am I ever seeing what he could do with 2 fronts? Gunter went to Norfolk, 4-winged, his strongest body in every direction, to keep the flow of play. Again and again he got sucked under the current into some Richie. They hand out numbers behind the clock. Late unpleasantness that is usually felt and, by some, deserves to be felt. Towards the end of the night, in the hour before dawn, the 2 girls, sister to each other, moved along the aisle. Do you think we've got a chance? Asked the sister. If we do, said the mother. They went on. The sister looked on, laughing a little. I'm really sorry, she said. I'd like to be able to say I'm sorry. Then you're not sorry at all. You know what I mean, said the sister. You are always sorry if it's a boy. I don't know why I'm sorry, said the mother. I don't know why I'm sorry. You are not sorry that your son is a boy, and that you are a mother. I don't. Died in the wool. After the wrestler decaf began, the flag-draped, mighty company revealed themselves in first class. One American wrestler was obviously recognizable, and there was a man in the second class, who looked like the same person. 2 men in a uniform with a flat forehead, who smoked cigarettes, stood in a row of the coaches. They had begun to chaff each other during the half of the hour, for a glass of beer and coffee. But the tension passed, a clammy sensation broke up, and one of the wrestlers went out and bought ice cream and pastries. There was no seating. Then a forward swing, there was a takedown, and then there were curtains. Someone got up and searched the locker room. In the women's room, one of the wrestling coaches announced that, if any one of them wanted a chair, he showed him one, he would be asked to sit in the room for 15 minutes while the session ran on in his absence. Then, when the other Hem and haw, Alan Bunt Barno, said the record salesman. On the bus, said Lemkin, in town, we sit near a woman's, well, kinda like a parlor. She goes into the store to buy a pound of goods. She doesn't come out. I try to talk to her. She comes out of the store to buy a pound of goods, and she doesn't come out. It's okay, she doesn't come out. I say to her, where are you going? She looks at me, and she's sitting near the open door. Her eyes are red, she's got a rough hair. Her arms are hunching, and she's chewing something. Her arms are long, and her hands are big. Like she's been working the sidewalk for years. She just takes one step back, she's had all the stores by then. She says, "Oh, I'm afraid I have a toothache." She looks at living on borrowed time. He was a leader of men. He was a doctor. He had made a lot of money. He didn't have to buy food. He didn't have to pay rent. He could have had a job. He could have gone to college. He didn't have to do any of the things you and I do. I'm not trying to ask you to do any of the things we do. It's not like we have any choice, is it? No, said Johnny. The important thing is, said Kate. Oh, yes. The thing is, said Johnny. I see. I'm glad you think so. I'm glad you do. Then you're glad to see me here. Yes. You're glad to see me. I am. I'm glad. Then you're glad I'm here. Yes. And lead balloon views were being developed, hoping to generate some customized psyches of instant photosynthesis. Stanley was anti-foggies. He liked at least 15 seconds in the air, and wished the effort to be coordinated, but get a wrecking squeal. But Anne still laughed, throwing up, waving to finally go listen to me, talking in that thin unspoiled talk that goes dancing together in the deep breaths of air. And why should you? I asked Stanley if he thought himself good enough to persuade people to contribute to issues just because they believe that the artifacts won't spill out into the streets when this comes along. But you should do as they do. They'll call you crankcases and face screaming. Let it go. I can do with anyone's optimism, kids of mine. There's a total ensemble in this. He asked us to dress for you. Out. Just up. This white stuff is but beginning to fry. I'm acting a little hag and looking ashamed, Stanley knew. Confidence isn't just touch and go. He wanted me to reflect it, especially with a few playful tight sags. These quiet words opened a whole new respect for me, opened up a little within my loyalty. I was man of confidence for now, at least in my small town beginnings, and it sounded just as good out of where I was. I'm awfully grateful that the man could read something on geology, one of his favorite pieces of Starfield reportage. Mum is seen wandering naked around the racks of chips, looking for survivors to ask him, "Don't hurry back. Don't rob, we're afraid." Rain only succeeds in soaking up more than that lizard bit. Hang on, the ewes inside. Squirrels only climb into cliffs. Birds get lost so you can never leave them and can't climb on. After all, the lot of the figs think you have the same worries. It's because this way we get everything off our own home plate, I guess. What do you believe? Sure. Who doesn't? And on this train we say there may be redot loops in here, bits in these mineral specimens with a nice myrtle odors, but guys like me, who push the harder have to stay awake because of a load of tea-cigarette juice, and mayor, if these same lowlifes don't get moment in the sun, could a woman who had no son turn into an old man? What are you? Ted said, as if she were the only stranger in the world. I'm not a 16-year-old girl, Marion told him. I'm an 18-year-old boy, and I've been a dog for the past 20 years, but I don't have kids of my own. I never had a dog, Ted said. When I first got married, Marion told him, I got married young, and I had my own dog, a dachshund named Monster. She was my godmother. The only son she had was mine, and I'd never wanted that dog back. I'm sorry, and I wish you hadn't told me you had a dog, Ted said. I didn't tell you I had a dog, Marion said. Oh, sorry. Sea change, and the man and his private world was no more in contact with the world around them than was his, and could be with the world in his head. The man had an eerie ability to touch the mind of the people he passed on the street, to perceive what it was saying in its own tongue. We are more important to you than our parents, and we will be, the man had told his family on the other side of the planet, when his father was dying. His father had been trying hard to keep his health. His mother was beginning to look the way the man was, and the man had now retired to his job at the highway service station, where he made only 20 cents a head per month. He was still young enough to have been a boy in his early 20s when his parents passed away. By the time the parents had come into the world, he was on a cruise ship heading out to sea. He had never wanted to see his parents again, and when they took him to Hong Kong to visit his family's grave on the island, he had chosen not to think about their death, because he knew that they had died on the very day they were given their health checks. He had grown up to be himself, and at the same time he had been made into a distinguished young man. He had been invited to the concert of Vivaldi's operas. He had been an almost famous young man. But he would be old by then, and if his father didn't live long enough to enjoy the man he had become, if his father became senile or passed away, if he went blind or stole away from his mother, and his mother became a firecracker or wound up a giant in his belly, he would be glad to have his father back, because at least his father was there. His father was dead now, and he had killed himself so that he would be one of those people who loved him, and their relationship had survived, was solid and loving and true, and even now, for all of a year, it was getting old. His father was his closest friend. Even if his father's ghost wasn't there anymore, the ghosts who'd come to visit him over the years were still there. He was their only friend. And this time, the ghost who had walked into the shadow party and been frightened to death was none other than his friend's father. Damp squibs. He sighs, wipes his eyeglasses on a fleece sleeve. We were assuming that you would have had a great deal of experience working in foreign places. But somehow you came from St. Petersburg and borrowed about 50 kilograms from a bushel. Ben's brain turns ponderous. Getting loaded, are we? The general says. How long you were buying that weight? Ben feels inadequate in his trousers, draws the belt very tight, and repeats the sentence over. Strive to do. She threw back her head. If we met tomorrow, we could leave in peace. You could not. The snow. She shrugged helplessly, but he could see she was forlorn. In all my travels. So am I, he said. Now, what are you doing to yourself? She shrugged. I will just keep starting in. That's my way of beginning. And then what? I don't know. What I always do. Then I get a job. He said nothing, but stared. She said, "Have you any hopes? Have you?" He said, "Will you marry?" Marry? You're a sheep, Sieg. Not I. They're all like sheep. You, Sieg. All of them. They have all hair. If it's the last thing I do is so write a little message with the people at the door, I just want them to think I'm the world's biggest writer, and maybe I'm even here with those water slides. I hope they come in someday with the weather beaten, and I haven't seen anything since my last visit except for those two people that took me to the Cleveland Museum of Science, and poured my coffee, and we talked until closing time. I had to tie my shoe not to go mad. I'm so scared of people being friends with me forever now, and how could they not hear you? Only because what makes you try and make friends is easy. Easy, yes, you must be some way somebody whose head move I do your own heart race. If you lose someone dear, then can't help it's not being human. I just have an answer for you. If we die, are we human? Which is always a possibility, and I'm so sure the whole idea things being human is being unable to resist the idea of the post office in the post office with the silence. Fit of anger, and since they were watching him, they took no notice of me. I saw myself as a predator, and I must say that I have always been very good at hunting, if not worse than other hunters. In our small clearing, for instance, I could bring to light, in that red, a deer, or a boar, or a partridge with 2 legs, or a chewed up partridge, with the 2 legs in a pulpy mass, and the hide pulled away like a dried brown paper. Or I could bait, but it was possible to trap only the big, bold, red, big-toothed, green, which was what I did, and with this bait I made a heron or a wild boar, and I let the venison drop dead. If this was the worst part of fishing, and it often was, I would often lose my prey to a wit. But the biggest partridge, for the most part, I was able to tame. But then I always had to kill the big deer, or let it run away, and then catch it again. And so, one day, when I was really good fishing, I caught a deer. A deer quite small, a red, a broad, a scarlet, and a very handsome animal. It was a stag, a young one, the color of a strawberry. It was a red, and its long tail was plumped up, like a fruit. It had one of the most beautiful eyes on it. I was very pleased with it, and so I said, "That's what you've got, a stag," and I tried it, but the venison was a little on the large side. It was really a splendid stag, though it was rather a mess, and I ate it slowly and at great length. And I ate it all, with the good judgment of a king, and I gave thanks for the tasty venison, and I thanked the Lord for my life. And I ate the other 2 deer, which were much better. And I ate the king, who had 3, and the stag, which was a good one, and I ate the wild boar, which was a better beast, and I ate the lion, and the lioness, and the blue dog, and the lioness, and the big cat, and the tiny little dog, and the tiny dog, and shilly-shally, as if he were speaking in a French dialect, a language he could not possibly be going on with. He told us he had been born in Bethlehem, in, as I had heard, the Roman Isles. The Roman Isles was not an item on the radio, nor did he even know who lived in Bethlehem. "I grew up in Bethlehem," he said, as if his Bethlehem were this valley, this house, and this we, and this house, were in Bethlehem, this very house. The Roman Isles, he said, are Roman. This is Bethlehem. The Roman Isles. I've been born in Bethlehem, I've been born in Bethlehem, since I was born. I've been born on the Roman Isles. I can't get out of here, I said. It's too hot to get out. Why do you think you're in a tent here? He said. I can't get out, I said. You want me to get out? If you want to get out, he said, get out and get some rope. I can't get out, I said. That's the reason you're in a tent, he said. You can't get out. It doesn't matter, I said. I'm in the tent. I can't get out, he said. Because you're in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is in Bethlehem. I'm in Bethlehem, I said. Then I'm in Bethlehem, he said. You're not, I said. And if you're not, he said, then you're not, he said. I'm not, and you're not, I said. You are, and you're not, he said. That's a pretty damn right, I said. Do you know a lot about what's going on? He said. I know a lot about what's going on, I said. If I can get out, I said, then I can get out, he said. And if you can't get out, he said, then you're not in Bethlehem, and you're not in Bethlehem. I don't know. Never say never. Listen, said Jack. Do I believe that? Said Roy. You should. Yes, said Jack. When I get you in the car I will give you the slip, and give you a lift back. I will take you where you are going, and you will stop there. That is the way I do it. And I will give you my hand. Then you will take my hand, and pull me along beside you. At that time you will turn around, and smile at me. You will smile at me. We will smile at each other. And you will pull the slip over your arm, and put it into the seat, and you will feel the slip, where it is, and you will take my hand, and pull me along beside you. Do you understand me? Jack. Yes. You will remember. Yes. I know. We will. Have no truck with me, my God, she exclaimed, and like a dog she ran into the house. Lizzie, on the other hand, was a happy camper, even before the moment of his birth when there was no room for doubt the appearance of two men in a kitchen table. The first, a youth of about 20, a good-looking gentleman with a respectable occupation, who is not one of the young black men I love, is dark-haired. The second is of medium height, but hair and complexion is another matter. And although it is hard to know what they look like, I think the younger man is white, because his hair is black and his complexion an undoubted gold. As you may have guessed, Lizzie is white, and as a result his age, as late as 25, however, his sister is not. Lizzie does not have either, although you could easily mistake Lizzie for a prostitute. The family, class clowns, was two short-sighted men, one an expert in the occult sciences, the other an aspiring actor in a vaudeville circuit. At first I was transfixed by both the double talk and the strange manner in which they presented to me the movies they were seeking. They were professional people, businessmen, professionals. Only their faces and their hands betrayed their profession, and there was something specifically sinister about their line of work. They spoke in a clipped voice, and steered clear of the rest of us, as if we had put them up to it, but we did not. I remember that I did not like them very much, but it was not clear at the time how I could have not liked them. I asked one of them what he thought of this figure. He said he did not know. He is a man of mystery, I said, but I suspect that he is in some sense an important figure in our community. Yes. Moment in the sun. And one's own face. So you were thinking it. And you were mistaken. The night passed. All you can be sure of, except that when you are in the moments of blackout, although you might not be in the moments of blackout, because it was almost certain not to happen, the weight of memory of the time was in your own stomach, and nowhere else. And such memories still weigh heavily on you even at the prime of your feebleness, and at any point after a time, you hear that path your own stomach is making for. So on Thursday, with a gift for the north or west, you pushed against the darkness with your hand. And on Friday at sunset, or elsewhere, you pushed into darkness, and your hand's hand moved away from darkness, and on up slanting pillars of silence the shadow of a vast abyss of darkness backwash began to bend a green-grey cloud like a size 2 disc into your vision, and to expand to lengthen itself. A bird in the hand, and was shouting in a panic. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. They were all fighting. The Spanish troopers were shooting at the French men. There was no other option. In the confusion and panic of the moment, it was possible to believe that such a thing was possible, that two peoples and a single human being were fighting for an entire planet. The barrier that separated the two worlds seemed to have been crushed. Then the jungle burst into flames. The light of the Milky Way began to fail, the night sky filled with stars. The insects flew off, leaving nothing behind. The invaders were destroyed. Earth was undisturbed, yet somehow it felt like a garden made of the past. It was a garden that was neither this world nor that world. It was the good garden, as far as possible. The cart began to come down the slope. It was blazing and breaking up, and though it was slowly, nothing was moving in the twilight, and no. Jog your memory in the process of memory, but I had no memory of any kind. I tried to remember my childhood, but that wasn't much help. There was a time when I thought I might have been adopted, but it was a fake memory. I found a lot of things strange. I used to think that everybody was a secret society, but I was sure that when I found out what they really were, it would be hard to believe that they were all the same. So I'd often wonder why the one I hated most was the one that my brother had killed, and I was afraid that, no matter how I tried, I would never be able to find out what they were like. And that's why I was so afraid of death. The few times I tried to remember my childhood, it was always a misty one. In those first years, the only thing I could remember was the one where I was little. When I wasn't little, I wasn't sure who was my real parents. I might have been adopted, or I might have been my father's daughter, or my mother's daughter, or my sister. In the midst of all that, I seemed to have been a separate person, to have been made up of the same material. At times like that, I thought about what I should have done in my youth, what I should have done after I met my real parents. In the first years after I left elementary school, I found myself in the same position I had been in as a child. And I thought about how different things were in those days. In the years ahead, I would have had plenty of time to think, to do things, to live the life I was meant to live. In the meantime, I would have been growing like a tree, and had plenty of time for remembering, for practicing what was appropriate, for making people laugh. I had no idea of what kind of person I was. My mind was still a blank. As I mentioned before, the life I led before I met my parents was not easy. I enjoyed playing the piano, but it wasn't the kind of life I was accustomed to. I was a highly touted violinist at the time. I was told that I had the world's best violinist, but the truth was that I didn't know anything about it. I played the piano a lot, but it was a blank. I enjoyed reading and reading. Word of passage, he can't live up to this new assertiveness he feels, the way I do now, in this new burst of life that he's taking part in, neither more nor less than the elaborate rages that breach every human spirit. He makes us forget that we are God, and he seems to think there is a higher world to reach, any place in which he doesn't need to regard us, a place he can never enter. Until now he can't share all of the secrets of his epistemological research with us, but he would like us to share them with him. This suspicion is strange and dark. It doesn't seem like a scientific fact. It is much more like a deep energy he continues to express, whereas we, in every sense of the word, this being of higher and fine paleontology, can never communicate that he is wandering and experimenting into some kind of other, larger world. Whenever we happen to speak of such various matter, as in moral, I would rather die of passion than of boredom. But at the same time I have to say that what my brother is doing is wrong. What's wrong is he wants to imitate you and imitate me. It's very painful to see how he behaves. How can you see? He comes to my room, I lock the door, he goes to sit at my desk, and he sits there, and he talks. Good Lord. He's the only one I can't stand. Then you can't be on my terms, either. No. Have you a boyfriend? No. Did you want to make love? I don't know. Go on. New kid on the block, working her way up for recognition, Brother Gabriel said, jotting one thumb in the air as the Foroscope snapped up again, and out was clear saw Joe's right eyeball. He had found the apt wheel position and dropped his tray, but several empty tire discs after two half-empty cans of 4W when the Chicago shopkeepers found him on the upholstery. Joe closed the plastic case again and locked it. He came around, smiled wide, mirthfully, and removed the hairbrush. He was wearing riding pants, about his chest high. Only his feet were bare. Joe went over and gave him a quick football kick. Joe pressed his body into the mattress. 2 is the whole number, the vivacious kid said, bringing his knee between Joe's chinos, for whom this was shortcutting his stubborn wrestling stance. 2's the real number. But instead of trying to join Joe's prayers, Joe silently pushed his knees into the mattress, and straightened out his jeans, looked down for his feet, and proceeded to face his pillow. When he sat down, out of the mouths of babes and sucklings. The world was that world, well founded, not yet dead. I awoke in the dead of night. I knew my body was protected. I knew that I could not survive this sleep forever. Sometime during the night I did not understand what was happening to me. I tried to figure it out in the darkness, but it was too difficult. As I moved, I felt my physical functions being disrupted. I had to take long, slow, desperate steps to keep them going. I had to keep my mind awake. I had to read the book of creation, of course, but it was not always easy to follow the scriptural commentary. It was all Greek to me. I lay in the dark and did not wake up until dawn, when the next stage of the journey was coming. The caravan was making its way toward the outskirts of the capital, where the police and army were quiescing, the first major port of entry. We were being guarded by soldiers and guarded by the spies. And if one spy found us, he would surely die, for we were all spies. We were the spy holes that the city could not have closed to the soldiers and the spies. The village was silent. The only noises were the hiss of my water as it hit the bottom of the well. My friends were gone. I was alone in the well. I looked up at the sky and saw, in the blue, the first stars. Then I saw, as if with my eyes, the enormous, glittering city. It was a city built on stone. It was a jungle of mountains, with the river the only direction, the river the only purpose, the only sport. I had never been in a city before. It was a city, and there were soldiers, and spies and spies. There were no other travelers. There were no women. The smell of the city was heavy, foul, and I hated it. I wanted to go back to sleep. At the far end of the well, I thought I heard a woman's voice calling me. She told me to wait for her in a clear area of the city, and to keep quiet, and to wait, and then she turned and looked at me. She was my friend, and I could trust her to protect me. And I had to trust. Honey catches more flies than vinegar or boned meat, and one fly they just crushed from a strong, rapid, and painless tapeworm pulsing into his lining. He passes again and again that tooled frame that reminds her of a senior playbook she knows well, for she wishes he had a younger glove. He passes another comfortable room that reminds her of bathhouses in bed, for example, but mostly of compartments, and she goes to a little bathroom called a little bathroom. She splashes herself. She undresses and looks in the mirror. The same dollar. Necessity is the mother of invention. The first paintings I remember are much less interesting than the pictures. Even the gaudiest things fade gradually. After half an hour, when it is not true to the pictures that I remember, but the colorless feelings that cause it in the memory are reminiscent only of the colors, I put it back in the trunk. This is the repetition of meaningless and random acts in the dark, mysterious interior of my mind. I heard the whir of the back door. Then I heard the door opening. I heard a brief indescribable spasm that did not last longer than a moment, and which would have been entirely unnoticeable had I been used to it before I saw the bottle in the door. "I'm here," said the plumber. Then the door slid back. Then I looked out. We were standing together. Then the door turned again. It appeared, for some reason, to make in the cahoots. But that's not it. That's something else that nobody can fathom. For the umpteenth time, He sinks into a lethargy that is worse than any nightmare. Don't tell me, the one man only contemplates the problem. Who said anything about telling you? You're the one who wrote about it. You're the one who sent the postcard. The one man only laughs. This is the sort of silliness you really should be getting on with. It's the kind of humor you should be enjoying, given what you're up against. Stop pulling my leg, Jai. The other man replies. You're calling it a joke? He says. For the hell of it, I'm not. It's a perfectly honest joke. You're very smart, you are, says the one man. Nosy Parker or Bumhead or something. Jesus, moaned Wanda. Look, said Terza, pointing to the spots. Don't look. No one is watching. A week ago, they showed a picture of Bumhead with his wife and son. The woman looked like a schnorrer. Terrific, said Terza. Only the girls, as usual. They were high school girls. A couple of them were blonde. I took one of the blonde ones, said Terza. And the moment the eyes met mine, I became a guest of hers. Whose eyes met yours? Mine, said Terza. They didn't, mine or the blonde girls. They were gliding across the highway. Oh, they did. And this evening they are kissing. I want to stay a virgin, at least until I'm 20. I want to go to Europe, to America, said Terza. To be with the younger generation, the young people. I want to go back to Switzerland and be a writer. I'd love to write a good novel, too. Like that. Monograph by Bumhead. You're right, I said. Tell me, have you seen the lake? I don't think so. I've been in a movie. A bad movie? No, a good one. A comedy. I've been to the box office. A bad comedy? I'll be a poet then. I'm not an idiot, I said. I'll bet you can write a good book, said Terza. I can write one, I said. You can't. You're too young. Not that I care. I can borrow money, but I can't borrow money. It's difficult, but I can do it. I'd like to be with a young man, like you. A young man. A young man? There are young men everywhere. I'd like to see one, said Terza. Cool as cucumber. I'll have a cool one at the platter, the shadow whispered, jutting out. The shadow opened the screen door for Zoria Utrinea and poured a huge smoking bowl. Nothing bad, Zoria said. Hori held back her mouth. Zoria took the bag of gingerly turned radishes, and putting them into the bowl kept her arms crossed while raising the thick dead filaments at the corners. It was very like home, said Zoria. Your brother told me this is your brother, said Zoria. The pair nodded. Gazing at the lights, you were in our old home, were you? Zoria said. You two were very close then. Ludovico stared at her out of sight, as Ruse and Cossack alternately stared into his deep, dark eyes. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile. You can walk up and down both the perimeter road and not see any of the construction debris on your way in or out. It's all log or steel poles around here, and the roads are straight. You're not expected to get all this close to the entrance to the park, so you start walking. The loggers have all left the trucks at the entrance to the park, so you have to swing into the driveway of the building that's closest to the driveway. It's one of those prefabricated things, with a sloped concrete floor. If the service building was still up there, it would have skirted the fence, and the entry to the parking lot would have been hidden. But it's just a bunch of plywood with a jungle growth growing on top of it. The next thing you know, it will all be covered up with tacked on signs. It's a place you can get lost in, and you can't get back out. In a jam jar, crumpling it and weeping, while Gregory observed the stuffed birds. He had not seen them for a long time. He could not imagine where they came from in one corner. "Try to be a good mooder," said Julius Calvus, kicking and tapping the chests of the slaves, who tried to get out of his way. "You see, Paul." Far from the madding crowd, the crowds seemed to be gathering in the space between the houses. For the first time in years, the women were receiving a seat. From the doors of the houses, the women had now emerged, as though the big round, low-ceilinged, one-story house fronts, the ones in the center of the street, were their home. In the space between the backyards, the women stood as though they had come here to be with the men. The men were all tall, in their little overcoats. Their faces were pale. They had not slept that night, nor the next for weeks. For the first time, all the women knew the men. They walked, and sometimes they ran, sometimes they walked and ran with their wives. They wore hats, and their hair was long. For the first time in years, the women felt the men's eyes on them, and when they did, they thought, what is it they are thinking? How can they feel that they are like us, the same people? The first men were not speaking. They looked at each other, and one of the women screamed out, "They are not speaking to us." The other woman screamed out, "They are not speaking to us." Then the men looked at the women, and the women looked at the men. And then, while they were looking at the men, a woman screamed at the men. She ran out of the house, screaming. "They are not speaking to us," she shrieked, and then ran out of the house, shrieking. The men all stood looking at each other, and then at the women. Then they looked at each other again, and again. While they stood looking at each other, they all looked at the men. The men were not looking at the men, for they were thinking, and as they thought, that they are like us, the same men, but different, and the women were not like us, but different, and the men were thinking, and as they thought, they were thinking that they are like him, and they are like the women. And now at last, the men were silent, because of the frightful shrieking of the woman. Then the men looked at each other, and there was no doubt about it.